Welcome back, everybody. This is Chris for Geek Tech Live. This is episode 136, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about basically my Comic-Con experience at C2E2, and the two things that I really thought was actually just fantastic, that the two top picks, if you will, from my visit to C2E2, outside of another story I'm going to be talking about as well, which is some of my cosplay pictures that went as close to viral as I'm probably ever going to get. So, without further ado, let's start the show. Okay, so I was at C2E2 last weekend, and since I basically am celebrating my birthday today, you're getting a treat. Instead of me getting a present, I'm going to give you a present, and that present is knowledge about some two very cool things that I came across at C2E2 that if you didn't pick up a copy or didn't find it while you were there, you need to go run out and get your hands on it immediately. The first one that I want to talk about is by an illustrator, basically called, his name is Jim Terry. He actually wrote a four-part, or illustrated a four-part comic series called Underneath. Now, the reason that I got pulled into this was I love going around into Artist Alley. I love seeing the art that is basically just being created while you're walking through Artist Alley. And C2E2 did not disappoint at all this year. Jim Terry, who is the illustrator for the comic Underneath, is just fantastic as far as his ability to draw and his ability to convey a story. So, what is it about Underneath that actually pulled me in? The first two comics are out right now. I believe the third and the fourth are going to be coming out soon. And basically, the story is about trolls that have basically, over a very long history, have been slowly making their way through a pool into the Chicago area. They tie in the Chicago Great Fire that devastated most of the city into the storyline, as well as bringing you directly up to the present day where, get this, the homeless people of Chicagoland area are actually the heroes that are keeping these trolls in check. So it's a fantastic story. It's a fantastically written, fantastically drawn storyline. It's very original, and I really enjoyed it. I finished the first two very quickly. They were an excellent read, and went back and reread the first one as well, just to get refamiliarized with it and make sure I didn't miss any little nuances. So again, the comic is called Underneath. There's some just really cool artwork with it, and the illustrator that I was able to talk to, fantastic guy. His name is Jim Terry. So again, Underneath by Jim Terry, and you can pick up the next two at the website that should be showing up if you're watching this on my Blip TV channel as well. Okay, so for number two on the list, and really only basically because this was at one of the bigger players like Marvel, DC, Archaea, you know, Artist Alley, like the Underneath comics that I just talked about. They came out of Artist Alley. They were done and were basically being done by people that weren't part of the major franchises, or were doing them as a side project instead of doing them at the major franchises. And that's why I gave them basically the number one slot rather than the number two slot. I think that independent comics are really where a lot of the really cool ideas come from. And those filter up, bubble up into the main storylines of a lot of the other comics that a lot of us read and buy on a daily, if not weekly basis. So what's in number two? This one really caught my eye based on a friend's recommendation, and I didn't really know if I was going to want it or not want it, or like it or not like it. The basic premise is this. Everybody knows this name. As soon as I say it, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I know exactly who you're talking about. Jim Henson. We all know him about basically all of the stuff, Dark Crystal, the Muppets, and you know, he was a fantastic person who was cut short in his prime from doing a lot of other things. Well, the archives of Jim Henson were being, I guess, dusted off, for lack of a better term, And inside those archives was found essentially an unfinished or a mostly finished script that was never actually made into the movie that Jim wanted. The name of the script was called Tale of Sand, and it's just a fantastic storyline, but it was done in a very interesting sort of way. A very, very little amount of dialogue, but it was supposed to be a very big, interesting, loud, just sort of colorful sort of movie. This was done, I believe, over the course of multiple decades, and it was revisited what seems to be about 3 times by Jim before he died. And a writer and artist, Ramon Perez, who was actually at C2E2, who was the essentially the artist behind the graphic novel that was put into a book form of the graphic novel, which is it's a hefty book, and it's a really great piece. Not only just from the fact of the cover and the cover art and everything else, but inside the pictures are just fantastic. The colors are extremely vivid, and the storyline is one of those stories that you can actually watch and read without having or needing dialogue. You get the sense and the conveyance of the story through the whole book. Just basically, I think there's probably a handful of sections in there that actually have dialogue in the beginning and in the end, but the majority of the center section of that story, it's just a fantastic sort of imaginatory sort of romp through. You basically write the story in your head based on the pictures that Ramon was able to draw for you, all based, of course, on Jim Henson's original screenplay that he wrote specifically for a movie that was never actually done. It's a big book. It's a lot bigger than I was expecting. And the cool thing about it, if you were at C2E2, was if you bought this, you also know that if you bought the book, Ramon was there to sign it as well. So I actually have a signed, autographed copy of Tale of Sand by Jim Henson, and basically authored and brought to life, if you will, by Ramon Perez. So those are my top 2 picks, Underneath and Tale of Sand. And if you haven't checked them out yet, you need to run out, you need to find them online, you need to go somewhere and you need to pick them up. You won't probably get them signed anymore because C2E2 is over, but it still is a very good read and I highly recommend them. Well, last but not least, C2E2 has cosplay, and this year I was actually very, very fortunate enough to get press passes to go to C2E2. And by the way, thank you, C2E2, if you're out there listening to me or watching me on Blip. I just want to say thank you for the press passes. They were put to very good use. As far as the cosplay goes, I was actually quite amazed. This was my first C2E2. I missed the first couple for other reasons. And so I actually made it to this one, thankfully, and boy, was it a fantastic C2E2 to go to. Hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, were dressed up in costumes, walking around. You can go to my Flickr site and actually look at the pictures that I took of the people in costume. One of them, by the way, essentially was picked up by CBS Chicago and went as close to viral as I'm probably ever going to get for a picture, a photograph of one of mine. It was basically an immortal Iron Fist, and not only did CBS Chicago pick it up, but the cosplayer himself actually wanted a copy to be able to frame for himself, because he thought that of all the pictures he saw of anybody that had done one of him, he wanted mine over everybody else's. So I know it's a little pat on the back on the podcast, but for me, it's a major turning point. I actually have people that really, really do like the pictures that I'm making and putting up. So check out my Flickr page. The Immortal Iron Fist, by the way, that went viral, went well over 8,000 hits in the first 4 days. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate everybody going out and taking a look at those pictures and talking about them and reaching out to me and asking me questions about them as well. If you saw me walking around with this shirt on at C2E2, basically find me on Flickr and find the image that is of you and either tag it with your name, send me an email inside of Flickr, or send me an email at flickr@geektechlive.com and let me know if you want to get a copy of your pictures. I will send them to you with no hesitation whatsoever. So thank you again, and I think that's about it for this episode of Geek Tech Live. This has been episode 136. I've been your host as usual, and we'll talk to you very, very soon.